I call this finish the surprise you didn't know you had a custom color. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Let's go ahead and see what sleeps inside this awesome Gen 3 Gibson chainsaw case. It's a white Les Paul Custom. Well, if that's what you thought, you're actually wrong. This thing is known as pearl white. And I can't tell you how many people don't realize that they actually own one of these. Because let's face it, unless you know the detailed history of the early 80s and all the cool colors that they were doing, you wouldn't necessarily know this any different from a regular white custom if you just happen to buy it and it's the only one you've ever seen. In fact, many times people will list these just as regular white because they don't know the difference. And 8 years ago, I bought one of these, and when I opened the box, I was kind of shocked. I've never seen a white custom have like this pearlescent hue to it. So I came to the incorrect conclusion that it must have been one of the silver ones that had aged, because I'd never heard of pearl white at that point in time. And that's when the comments steered me right and turned me on to the whole pearl white thing. It's just one of those finishes that never gets talked about and typically does not get sold correctly. So what makes pearl white different? So you have like a little pearlescent shine to it. It's not a lot, but it's enough to get you excited. You have to get really up and in its face to even notice it's different. But again, unless you have something else to compare it to, it's hard to tell. The problem is, when the finish ages, it starts looking like an aged white custom. So if you own a white Les Paul Custom from the year 1982 through about 1985, go check it. Make sure you don't actually have pearl white, and you just don't realize it. Because here it is, side by side with a traditional white. Well, actually, I'm lying. This is the Tuxedo Custom. Check that out here. And you can tell the finishes are very similar. I mean, this one's aged a little bit more, and it started more as a yellowed white, but you can just see they're white customs. So here's two examples of, if you like white customs, but you want something a little bit different, you could check out one of these bad boys. But now, what are the other unique colors offered in the early 80s? What sparked the review of this one is we just recently documented Harvest Burst and Candy Apple Red. They're the Orange Peel sisters. They were experimental colors that used real bronze metal flake, and as the finish cured, you got a bunch of bumps. They also had Pewter, which is just a straight up silver custom. Guitar Center did a limited edition run in 1977 as a 25th anniversary run, but then they brought it back as just a staple color in the 80s. Now, if there's actually a hue difference, we'll have to find out. I haven't documented a true Pewter yet. Guitar Center also did an all gold in 1980, so we could kind of throw that in here. The other big baseline custom color is Charcoal Metallic. That's a pretty cool one. It ages into an olive green hue. And speaking of green, there's actually a few Holly green guitars. Now, usually those aren't Les Paul customs, like I've seen a Les Paul Standard and some Flying V's, but that's like one of the rarer 81s. I suppose we can throw Silverburst into the mix. However, that was first introduced in 1978, but was still very prevalent through about 86-ish. Outside of Les Paul customs, you could find things like Night Violet on the Studio Custom and some Explorers and Flying V's. Same thing is true for Blue Silverburst. I mean, I guess we could technically throw the Designer series in here, but I'm mainly talking like solid colored finishes and bursts. Occasionally you'll find an odd Cardinal Red on like a Flying V, or maybe check out Bahama Blue or Bahama Blue Sparkle. They had a lot of cool sparkles, such as Cherry Sparkle that we had on this Les Paul Standard. I've also seen a pretty cool Ebony Sparkle E2 before. So needless to say, they were experimenting with a lot of cool stuff in the 80s, 82 through 88-ish. But now you're probably curious, hey, Trogly, pearl white. Can I find that on anything other than a Les Paul custom? Yes, you can find it on customs. You can find it on standards. I've even seen a few deluxe with this finish. But it's also available on a Flying V2. Might you find it on a regular V? Maybe. I've seen it on an actual Explorer. And then I know I said 1982 through 1985 is when you normally find it, but the SG Elite series in 87 and 88 actually utilized this finish as one of the base colors. Now, is it one of the most valuable rare colors of the 80s? No. Again, most people don't even know it's there. And it's hard to appreciate it unless you have it in person. I'm glad we get to redocument one of these. I had a really clean 1985 once, but I'm actually really happy I picked this one up because it's got all the special early 80s parts. So not only are we talking about rare colors today, let's review those cool parts. We've got the 3.2 pneumatic bridge. We'll talk a little bit more about this one on the workbench. We've got the diamond posi lock strap buttons, basically a strap lock utilizing a regular strap button style. The ever so popular flip out winding tuners. It's to make string changes easier. If you have a string winder gun, they're pretty much useless. I just think they look like really cool ninja stars when you flip them all out. It looks like it wants to attack ya. The only thing this one is missing to make it truly cool is the original Tim Shaw PAF stickers that they initially had on their rings. Most of those didn't get left alone though. So to learn more about this pearl white beauty, let's throw it on the workbench and really get it cleaned up, because these frets are looking pretty bad. Well, after that 2-hour cleanup job, it almost looks like an entirely different guitar. I think this really helps show off the pearlescent coat now that the light can properly reflect off of it. So kind of like a golden pearl color at this point. So it kind of started off like a silver pearl. There was a very similar finish to that they did in the 2016 era. But here you can see what it probably would have started life as. Our pickguard generously shaded that area. This was sold to me as a little bit of a rubbed through the clear coat area here. That almost looks like somebody did that and then resprayed over an area, so we'll have to check on that during the blacklight test. Let's dig into our pickups. Our neck is a May of 1983 Tim Shaw PAF, and then our bridge pickup is a perfect match. However, somebody did have the covers off at one point, and then decided to put them back on. Looking inside our neck pickup cavity really shows you what it would have looked like brand spanking new. We've got some sort of a squiggly in here, but it's a short neck tenon as is what was used in this era. And here's another one for our data pool. 1983 still has that small pancake layer between the maple top and the mahogany body. I would assume it stops shortly after this. Here you can see the mahogany exposed, some sort of another squiggle. And within the circuit, the pickups read 7.44 k ohms in the bridge, 7.37 in the neck, and just for fun, 3.7 when they're together. Here's another unique thing about this bridge. The studs are different from a regular Tune-o-matics. They've got a little bit bigger of a thumb wheel, and stock from the factory, they do have these black plastic spacers. Usually, they're not there anymore. Kind of lucky this one had it. Now let's take a look at that bridge I was talking about. So this is a very interestingly short-lived part from Gibson. 82 to 84, you might find these things. So it's a 3-point Tune-o-matic, and they call it 3-point because you see these 3 sections that are separately routed? They allow you to put the bridge into different orientations, so it can be slanted like that, it can be straight across, or you can have it the other direction, or any of the in-between positions. You can also have it lower, lower, or upper, upper. It basically helps you get a little bit more intonation room out of this. So people were hypothesizing that it was so they could make one bridge and drill the body for one area, whether it's a left-handed guitar or a right-handed. Or maybe it was, hey, we messed up a little bit here, we can, just adjust our stuff with this. I happen to have a new old stock one right here. 3-position adjustment for the entire bridge. 3-point Tune-o-matic bridge. Now, when I purchased this lot, I thought this was a brand new thing I'd never seen before. No, it's because I'd never seen these things side by side. So there's 2 different bridges that have the 3 points. However, there's only one that's called the top adjust Tune-o-matic bridge. So it has the same 9 bridge positions on the back. However, you adjust the saddles from the top and you can find them with nylon as well as brass saddles. Personally, I prefer this version because top adjust saddles just don't make any sense to me. I was just always thinking top adjust means you can adjust it at the top. But no, it's referring to that. And now our tailpiece. I think it's seen better days. Some of the coating looks a little bit wavy. I'm not quite sure what happened to this. It has the traditional casting mark to be original, but it cleaned up nicely. While reviewing all the parts, here's a look at our pickguard. It's got some scratches. This thing was definitely played. However, despite being played as much as it is, we'll see on the frets, they took incredibly good care of this. I mean, besides that area, I don't really see any major nicks or dings or super finish wear. It was well respected. There is a small ding right there, and you can see the seam lines on this. So there's one right here where the lacquer has sank a bit. Then there's another one over here, which is always a bummer when that happens, but as long as there's not an actual crack and things separating, you're usually okay. Now we can move on from our 3-piece maple top with the mahogany body to our maple neck with ebony fretboard. Here's a reminder of what the frets used to look like. And here's what they look like now. That fretboard seriously needed cleaned. I wasn't able to get the exact shine I was looking for on the frets because unfortunately they just have wear pretty much all over. It definitely looks way better than it was. Because that was kind of the thing about this guitar in my collection. I always kind of hated it. I've had it for like a year and a half. It was advertised as just freshly cleaned setup, great new strings, and then what arrived was obviously never touched. I'm noticing something kind of strange right here. It looks like somebody took a pen and like marked it. We've got a 24 3/4 inch scale, 12 inch fretboard radius, with a 1.71 inch nut width, increasing to 2.05 by the 12th. First fret neck depth 0.82 and 0.96 by the 12th. Here's what that looks like at the first fret and the 12th fret. It's a round 60s neck profile. Gets a little chunkier as you get up in the 12th fretting area. Now let's look at our headstock. This cleaned up beautifully. The logos don't look as yellow as the rest of the binding. That's kind of interesting. But we've got some sort of like a cigarette burn / stand mark right there. And we can see our maple neck with truss rod. Here's what the cover looks like. And our flip out winding tuners. Before we switch over, I wanted to show you this in a different light. So again, a little bit of a pearlescent shine. Come over to a normal white finish and it's just a thick white. You don't have anything else going on. This is what most white customs are. But again, you come back here, you see that little sparkly shine. I hate to use the word sparkle because it's not necessarily a sparkle, it's a pearlescent effect. It's very subtle. Think a light metal flake finish. But from a couple of feet away on stage, everybody just thinks you're trying to be Randy Rhoads. This hasn't yellowed quite as much as the areas on the neck, but that's to be expected. It's the player's sweat that starts to discolor that. But we have a 4th week of 1983 pot there, same over here. And then our week is covered over there, but this one looks like 8312. Since the pickup covers have been removed, I was really curious to look at these. This looks factory stock solder work to me. The reason why if somebody removes the pickup covers, you gotta be worried. To rewind a pickup, you also have to remove the covers. However, most times people are just going for a look. I mean, the whole black and white does have a really cool vibe to it. But normally to rewind a pickup, you're going to take the whole lead out. So I think it's safe to assume somebody did that for cosmetic reasons, or they wanted slightly higher output. Over top of these controls, you have the shielding tin yet, but that starts to phase away very shortly after this, and they go back to traditional ground wires. Grab a quick look at our toggle switch cavity and our strap locks. The back is pretty nice and clean. I did notice a few strange spots. Like right here, there's like a smudge or something underneath the finish. It's proud, it wasn't sanded flush. There's another like almost nail head visible right there. I don't know what they were doing. Then we've got a couple of light impressions and a few small dings around the edge. But again, this was well taken care of. This finish is very prone to finish checking. This one, not too bad. We can look around the rest of the edge. And now our base side. And run up the neck real fast. I didn't really notice any huge gouges, just a couple of light impressions. There's strange finish check / nail gouges or something. I'm not sure what those are. You don't really feel them though. And then the back of our headstock. This one dates to 1983, 578th in production. Now what's kind of cool about this, it's a very small period in time when you can find a non-voluted 3-piece maple neck from Gibson. The volute disappears before the mahogany necks come back. So 1 year later, this would have been a mahogany neck. But when Gibson first introduced the maple necks on Les Paul Customs, it was 1976. You know, there's a few before that, but that's like that big transition date. And then it's 82 into 83 is the transitional period back. We can see the maple right here through our small finish rub. Now we'll do our backlight test. Everything looks the way I would expect to see there. Everything's about right here on our neck. Again, slight color differentiation because of the player's sweat. Edges of the neck are looking good. A little bit of dirt built up that I missed. We're good on this edge and over here. And now let's see what's going on with our top. That's a tough call. I'm going to go ahead and say somebody probably did a clear coat touch up over that to prevent that from spreading. Because you can see it glows just a little bit darker, but you really only see that in the camera. It's kind of strange. And hey, I wondered why that looked weird. Somebody has finished over our tailpiece, it appears. And now that I know that, I kind of feel it. So it must have started flaking on them for some reason. And then maybe when they did this, they said, hey, can you shoot my tailpiece? I guess I don't have to worry about that thing flaking off at least. And here's the face of our headstock. This one weighs 10 pounds, 10.5 ounces. I can't believe that. This thing feels like it's 9 pounds. I'm shocked by that. But let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Now that we know all about the pearl white finish on this Les Paul Custom, what are my final thoughts? It's not my favorite custom I've ever played, but it definitely has an interesting tone to it. My biggest complaint is it's kind of heavy, but hey, most Les Paul Customs from this era are. Now you know this thing exists, and if you ever run into one in the wild, you actually know what it is rather than just some strange white Les Paul that nobody seems to be able to identify. And maybe you'll find one of these parts for sale separately one day where nobody else knows what it is. And we learned about the cool limited edition 80s Gibson parts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you happen to have a cleaner one than this, feel free to let me know. As of right now, I'll keep this one in my collection though until I find one that's nicer. This one's gonna be pretty hard to beat because having all the cool 80s parts on it lets me look past some of the other minor imperfections. I mean, this is a pretty good example overall. And I hope you enjoyed learning about it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.